Embedded journalists came to rise during the war in Iraq.
Once again, this fight has been taken into the heart of Baghdad. We're not on the outskirts. We're not in greater Baghdad. This is it.
The Department of Defense planted hundreds of reporters in the field, giving front row seats to approved media outlets, like Fox News and reporters like Greg Kelly, who also happens to be a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves.
This was the first time that we were seeing war happening basically live on television 24/7, with the reporters right there in the middle of it.
But also enabling the military to control what journalists see and better tell their story.
You might focus more on those troops and what their perspective is.
Gina Cavallero was embedded in both Afghanistan and Iraq.
When you're embedded with the military, you're covering the military. You're not likely to just leave and go and stay with the villagers.
And from war to politics, today, reporters embed with political candidates. It's a technique commonly used by the mainstream media.
They've been dubbed campaign embeds, the off-air network producers who follow the candidates around.
These reporters are linked to their candidate almost around the clock.
Hello, everybody.
On the plane, on the bus, they get an up-close and personal look at the day in the life of the candidate they follow.
Veggie.
I'll take a veggie.
Veggie. There we go.
Does anyone want a ham?
Ham. What are you guys eating back here? What do you guys want?
In the process, the reporters get to know their candidate well, at least on the surface.
It's actually very gratifying to hear the same speech over and over again. When you're covering someone man-to-man, you notice the differences, the tiniest things that he might say differently in a stump speech in a place like New Hampshire versus a place like Iowa.
But are political reporters for the mainstream media then campaign insiders? And does the line blur between covering the candidate and working for them?
This Iowa caucus was almost like it was just a sham. It was like a media ritual that we're just reinforcing these rituals for elections.
Meanwhile, a recent poll shows public opinion of the media at its lowest point in decades. 66% say news stories are often inaccurate. 77% think news organizations tend to favor one side, and 80% say the news is influenced by powerful people in organizations, which some say is why one candidate doesn't get his fair share of coverage. Ron Paul. His strong anti-war message strays from the Republican mainstream.
When they do have to cover him, because they can't not, they choose to cover him in a very propagandized way and try to suppress him and disenfranchise him.
And while overlooking one candidate, perhaps too much is divulged on others.
Because we've got these 24-hour cycles with these, information traveling very quickly, their coverage is going to be even more superficial.
One of Mitt Romney's most recognizable features, his hair. And of course, leave it to the New York Times to track down his stylist, who says that he's tried to tell Romney to go more natural.
So when journalists form such cozy ties with candidates, instead of covering and exposing them, are they actually catering to them? From the bias to the superficial, reporters may need to break away from the bus in order to get the story right and to keep the public truly informed. In Washington, Liz Wall, RT.